Everybody,
Good evening.
let's settle down. We came in about a minute or two late, but welcome to this Ward 10 feedback. I've been doing these for just over 2 years now. This is probably my 8th. And I normally get 1 or 2 people. A couple, nobody's turned up, so I'm extremely happy to have so many people here tonight. I'm going to do what I normally do, which is give a ward feedback on the issues that have been raised in the recent past to me that are ward specific or that have a particular application for the ward. But I also want to handle tonight my personal situation. It's obviously well known that I've just been removed as the Deputy Mayor and as the Ward Councillor for, sorry, not the Ward Councillor, the Portfolio Councillor for Finance, Governance, and sometime before that, Economic Development. So I will go and describe what has happened. This is not a woe is me session. I just want to lay out the facts and let you all be the judge of what happened and what the way forward should be. What I'll do is start with the ward issues, and I'll break them down into the different directorates. The municipality is made up of a number of different directorates. There's finance, governance, technical services, community services. I'm missing one. Planning and development. I'll start with finance. The issues that have been raised in the last few weeks and months, there have been a lot of incorrect bills that have gone out, rates bills and bills for service charges, particularly to those whose properties have been destroyed or damaged. As you know, the council has agreed to waive all rates on destroyed properties for the coming year, for the financial year that we are in. But however, the accounting system takes some time to catch up with that. And I've had a number of complaints that bills have still gone out with the rates and with water charges on them and things like that. So that is being attended to. There has been a backlog. The finance department is working very hard. But if there is anybody that is still receiving bills that you consider incorrect, I have asked the CFO whether he'll personally receive the emails of complaint in this regard, and he said that he would. So his email address is cfo@knysna.gov.za. Anybody receiving bills of account that they consider to be incorrect or that are still charging them in respect of rates or services which they believe they should not be charged. We are getting through the backlog, but it doesn't mean that we're there 100%. In terms of the rates collection at the moment, we're on budget, in fact slightly ahead of budget, so that's good news in terms of the revenue collection for the town. The other aspect that I want to get to is the new CFO. I call him new. I think he started in March. It was the beginning of March, beginning of April. He came to us from Vito. He's, in my judgment, an extremely good CFO, got a lot of knowledge, both of municipal finance and of general finance, and I think has risen to the challenge and has taken on some of the solutions that need to be put in place in terms of the proper financial management of the municipality. So irrespective of my situation, I think we're in good hands when it comes to the financial management of the municipality going forward. That was the major issue on financial services. What I want to do, if there's anybody that has anything else, make a note of it, and I'll take questions at the end. Because I think otherwise we'll probably be here all night and start answering questions and answering questions 2 or 3 times. On technical services, the water situation is extremely topical and crucial. We have a lot of businesses in Ward 10, restaurants, B&Bs, hotels, etc. And when I first arrived on council in 2015, within a few months, I became the portfolio councillor for technical services and planning. But in this regard, I took on the water situation, both raw water supply and wastewater treatment, as a challenge for me personally. And I'd just like to report back on where we're at in that regard. I did make notes because I called the department earlier on today. The Knysna's water situation is, we have one main storage dam, it's called the Upper Clerk Dam. That at the moment is 37% full. We have a small catchment dam called the Glebe Dam. That is about 30 to 40% full, 40 to 35%. Those are the two main storage capacities that we have. We then draw water out of the rivers, the Knysna River and the Gona River. We also draw water out of boreholes, and we have a reverse osmosis plant. To put in context where we are at the moment, I say the Upper Clerk is 37 and the Glebe 30 to 40. That roughly translates as follows. The Upper Clerk Dam's capacity is about 870 megalitres. The Glebe Dam is about 150 megalitres. Taking those numbers at the moment, we're looking at we've got about 375 megalitres in storage at the moment, excluding river flow. That translates into about a 43% reserve. This time last year, going into the season, we had about 60%. So we are substantially down on last year. But it's not all doom and gloom, and I'll explain that now. One of the personal crusades that I had when I was portfolio councillor for technical services was what was called the Charleston scheme. And that was to improve the capacity to draw water out of the Knysna River. It's a total scheme of about 65 million. We spent 9 million last year, we're spending about 22 million this year, and the balance in years to come hasn't been budgeted yet. The good news is phase one looks as though it's on track. By that I mean it should be completed by this December, i.e. next month. What that means is that the ability to draw water out of the Knysna River will increase from about 80 litres per second to in excess of 120 litres. It could be as high as 150 because of additional pumping capacity and new pipes that have been put in to increase that the ability to take it off. So what that means is that we'll be able to draw probably another 2 megalitres a day out of the Knysna River as long as it keeps flowing and there's water in it. At the moment, is flowing. The flow is not as good as it could be, but clearance over the weirs, and that's what we look at, is at about 80 to 100 mils at the moment. Environmentally, we shouldn't draw when it goes below 50, but we keep drawing as long as there's water there. That, in addition to the RO plant, which was another issue that I took up back in 2015, that hasn't been on stream for the last number of months, but various cables were stolen and then they needed to do maintenance on the membranes, etc. That is all on track as well, and that plant should be up and running, I'm told, within 2 weeks. Let's give it 2 to 3 weeks. That also gives us the capacity to generate another 2 megalitres a day. So when I say our storage is down on last year, our ability to source raw water has actually improved a lot. And as long as we get some water in the rivers, it looks to me as though the ability to source from the river flows and the other renewable sources will, except for the really peak offtake during the latter half of December, beginning of January, match what the demand is. Demand has come down. Demand is now between 10 and 11 megalitres a day, which is very good compared to what has happened in previous years of looking at the increase in population, etc. So what happened a couple of years ago when we pushed the button on that Charleston scheme and we refurbished the RO plant were good moves and should improve our water security going forward. So to all of you who are running B&Bs and hotels and have restaurants, we are not nearly in the situation that Cape Town is in. And the prognosis going forward, obviously as long as there's some water that falls on us from time to time and keeps the rivers flowing, means that we are in a better position now, in my view, than we were a number of years ago. So that is something that I'm pleased about, and I hope that will stand us in good stead going forward. You can ask me questions afterwards if anybody has specifics there. That was something I wanted to cover. The other aspect of technical services is the wastewater treatment plant. There was recently an item that came before council where there was authorization sought for the spending of about 140 million rand, broken down roughly 25 million on upgrading the existing wastewater treatment plant by just over a megalitre a day in capacity, and a 4 megalitre a day new plant, either where the existing facilities are or somewhere else in the northern areas. I was vehemently opposed to that because I happen to have done quite a lot of research, and I'm in touch with who I consider to be an extremely knowledgeable and expert person in this area, and I believe we can sort that problem out without spending anything near that kind of money. But what is happening now is that the department has to go back and produce another report for council. So nothing is going to happen in that regard in the very short term. Although it is quite pressing because the overflow from the wastewater treatment plant obviously adds to potential pollution problems in the lagoon. But as I said, that's coming back. The road maintenance budget for Ward 10 was disappointingly set at 3% of the total road maintenance budget for Knysna. There will be another 6 million spent on the CBD rejuvenation program, basically Grey Street. That was money that came forward from the previous year, so there's no new allocation in that regard. We have adopted a new system, it's called the RAM system, which replaced what was called the PMS system, the pavement management system. How the system threw up 3% for Ward 10, I couldn't possibly explain, and I just don't believe it, but it's something that Ward 10 will just have to live with for this year. And if I'm still around, I'll be fighting very hard next year for a better allocation. The CBD rejuvenation program, the 6 million that is budgeted for, some of that is being spent on consultants who have been appointed, Chris Mulder's company, to do a whole redesign of the CBD area, so that there's a long-term plan that's put in place, and we can then spend the money over the next number of years as budget becomes available to have a completely different and consistent and more friendly approach to creating an environment and an ambience in the CBD. I think we'd all agree that if you walk around the CBD today, it doesn't reflect a town that has a budget of close to R1 billion. So we need to be doing something about the way it looks and feels, and this is the start. But 6 million rand is not nearly what it's going to take to transform our CBD into what it should be. But I think this is all, at least it's a good start. Only other thing on technical services, the electricity situation and the electricity certification. Municipalities should have an official in charge who is certified by the government to oversee the work within the municipality. So when they go and work on the substations and the lines and stuff like that, you've got to have somebody with what's called a ticket. We have somebody who has a ticket, but he's not using his ticket for the municipality, so we're actually operating at the moment without a ticket holder. No skin off my nose. If I was the municipal manager, I certainly wouldn't want that, because if anything goes wrong, he's the one who goes to jail, nobody else. But it is a bit of a worry that we haven't been able to sort that problem out, but hopefully the powers that be are looking at that seriously. Moving on to planning and development, building plans. We are coping at the moment with the increased number of building plans, although I believe we haven't seen the surge that was expected yet. However, what the increase is, as I say, being properly handled, lots of overtime being worked. We have been promised various additional resources to come in from surrounding municipalities. Nothing so far. I believe there is somebody allocated from George who should be able to come and help us beginning of next year, where there is a surge that's going to be expected. I think it's taken longer for people to settle insurance claims and to get building plans in. The building plans that have been submitted so far, I'm told, are by and large different than the footprints that were there before. So people are actually changing what they want, and the fast tracking that we envisaged, i.e. if you wanted to rebuild exactly what was there, then we would be fast tracking that. You could get those plans through in a couple of weeks. That doesn't seem to be happening. People want to build something different. And that to them is the normal planning process. But having said that, it's not taking months and months. We are doing it within, I think it's a 30-day prescribed period. So the guys are working hard, doing a good job in the building department with the plans. Demolishing burned sites. That is the owner's responsibility. I know there were a number of things at the previous report back meeting, which was just after the fire, that I think people thought they were going to get, and this was one of them, where the municipality would step in and help people demolish. We haven't got the funds coming through from the National Disaster Centre. The central government has not contributed anymore, so that remains the responsibility of the owners. If there is a danger, a structure is dangerous, then we will demolish it and charge the owner. We do that on complaint. We're not going around and assessing for ourselves what is and isn't dangerous. But if you live next door to or on the same street as a structure that you believe may become or is dangerous, then you must let us know, and we will then assess it and, if necessary, demolish it ourselves. Notices will start going out next year, I believe, for owners that have just left their properties. How are we going to handle that within our policies? I'm not quite sure yet, and that is still going to be something that I think Council has to decide on. The environment, there was a slope stabilization program that has been completed. That was, the work was largely done by working on fire people. It was funded by them and by the district. I think we've contributed a small amount, but it's a very small amount. That has been a very successful program. I think one of the major risks immediately post-fire was flooding and mudslides and things like that, and of course, lo and behold, within a month we had rain 50 mils in a 24-hour period, and there were mudslides. I know because some of it ended up in my garage in Brenton-on-Sea. But by and large, the work that was done there was done timelessly, and I think has been very successful. And we have had a number of heavy rainfalls subsequently, and those measures seem to have worked well. The other major thrust on the environmental side is alien clearing. We have appointed a project manager to clear aliens on municipal land. Exactly what we are going to do in terms of bylaws to try and force private landowners to do the same, either force or incentivize or a combination, I think that still has to come before council. But I think from an environmental point of view, it's going to be extremely important going forward that as Knysna regrows, we don't recreate or even worsen the problem that was there before. Aliens tend to rejuvenate much more quickly than the indigenous vegetation, and it is something that we are taking seriously. And we have allocated, there is some money in our budget, but exactly what it's going to take going forward, I think is still a bit up in the air. The last thing on planning and development is the pollution into the lagoon. It is monitored. The wastewater treatment plant does spike. The effluent going in there. We still got the Bongani stream that gives us problems, and the various culverts in downtown. And we need a comprehensive policy to address all of this, to ensure that, particularly Ward 10, because it's all in Ward 10, but the whole of Knysna benefits. And that I know is high on the list of issues that are being addressed by the Mayor and her environmental reporting group. I'm not quite sure how they call themselves. The next directorate I'll talk about is community services. Asbestos removal, particularly in Ward 10, is a major issue. We were promised funds from the National Disaster Centre, whatever they call themselves. That hasn't come forth. And so asbestos removal remains the responsibility of the property owner. And it is something that is being taken seriously. We will be issuing notices for people who haven't removed asbestos. We can do that under our existing building control regulations. And it is something that is unfortunate. We had hoped that we would get help from at least central government, if not province. On that topic, there were a lot of promises of help in a wide variety of areas, and to my knowledge, we haven't received, and I asked the CFO this the other day, have we received any money from national government or provincial government yet? And the answer was no. So other than the approximately 3 million rand that is sitting in the account from private donors, we haven't received any extra resources. That was just an aside. The Old Cape Road situation, I've been asked by a number of people what is happening. There are squatter camps, supposedly, or not supposedly, there are people that are squatting. Some of them have been on those properties for many, many years. In one case, the private landowner is trying desperately to get eviction orders and to evict the people. It's not so easy. In some cases, people have been there for many, many years, and you can't just evict if you don't have alternative plans and accommodation. In the case of one of the people who was a huge complainant at my last meeting, and I think has gone to the press as well, got children, she just refuses to move. Alternative sites were found for her and her children with water and potential electricity connections. She refuses to move. So it is a difficult problem. I know that the municipality, the Human Settlements Department did contribute some building materials for one of the dwellings to be rebuilt. When I say rebuilt, these people had been living in abandoned houses on these private properties, and it was felt that, and they'd been there for so long that it's very, very difficult to evict them. It was felt that from just a human point of view, once humanity comes to play, that at least in the short term they will have some shelter. But it is an ongoing problem, and I don't have answers for the people that have brought this to my attention, and there are a number. As I say, the private property owners are trying hard to enforce their rights. The municipality has, in fact, in the recent past, sent out law enforcement to try and remove new squatters, but it's an ongoing issue and an ongoing problem. So I don't have much good news in that regard. The Woodmill Walk situation and the goods that are in storage that were donated by private people from around the country, and maybe even from elsewhere, are being stored at Woodmill Walk. The landowner is being extremely difficult. He is not allowing municipal employees access to those items. He is allowing the Department of Social Development, and through them the Red Cross, some access for the distribution of those goods. What we are going to do to supply fire victims with product between now and Christmas, I haven't heard. I don't know if we have specific plans to do that. I would hope we do. There are still fire victims out there that do need that help. Summer is coming. There are a lot of summer items and clothes still there. But I think that if there was one aspect that we probably didn't cover ourselves in glory in, it was the disaster management effort. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. It was a disaster of a scale that a municipality the size of Knysna could never plan for, and certainly doesn't have the resources to address adequately. But within that, I think we've got to take our fair share of criticism, and hopefully we'll be able to address the remaining issues and get some further relief to the fire victims. One last aspect I want to deal with is there's a garden rebuild initiative. I believe there was a meeting in this hall, was it last night or the night before? Not much has come to council in respect of the garden rebuild initiative. It's a provincial initiative. It's been coordinated by somebody who works out of I think it's the Economic Development Department of Province. It is to coordinate the relief effort and to ensure that we can access the funds that would be available from central government and from province. As I say, they've been successful in terms of getting the stabilization of slopes. We haven't, I haven't seen much else. I know that a lot of work has gone into it and continues to go into it, and a lot of the officials are involved. But as I say, there hasn't been a report back to council other than in the very early days there was a briefing of individual councillors, but at that point in time it was still very unclear who was going to pay for it and what the brief was and what the objectives were, etc. As I say, nothing further has come. I've been asked some questions about that, and that is under the direct purview of the municipal manager and the mayor. And as and when items come to council and I have further information, I will put it out there. But that's basically all I can talk about when it comes to that. Those are the ward issues that I have. And please make note of your questions. Let me come to my removal as the deputy mayor. Once again, I do stress this is not a woe is me issue. I believe that if people are in politics for a salary, they're going to be bitterly disappointed at some point in time. So that was never what I was there for. I'm there because I believe I can make a difference. I believe I have a particular skill set and knowledge and experience that could be of use in terms of the management of a municipality going forward. And certainly my removal was as a result of my colleagues informing the political structures in the DA that they no longer had confidence in me, that they could no longer work with me. And that came about because of a number of items that came before council, particularly at a council meeting on the 11th of August. Two in particular were the funding of Knysna and Partners, which was the tourism entity in Knysna, and the other was the cancellation of the community services director, who had been employed unlawfully way back in 2013. There were aspects of both of those issues that were before council that I felt were unlawful, and my oath was, when I was sworn in as a councillor, was first and foremost to the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of South Africa. And that, for me, trumps any particular party policy or loyalty. In terms of the KNP funding, it is a technical issue, but I have felt strongly enough to take it to the Hawks, and they are investigating it. So we'll see what comes of that investigation, whether my interpretation was correct or not. I can tell you they are taking it very seriously, though. The other one was the re-employment of the community service director who had been illegally employed. There was no debate about him being illegally employed. His contract had to be cancelled. My concern came in that he was then transferred. So his contract was terminated, and then he was transferred to another position within the municipality. Now, technically, you can't do that. Once you cancel the contract, once the contract is set aside, he is no longer an employee, so he can't be transferred. He would then need to be re-employed via our normal employment policies. So it was on that basis that I objected to that. In both cases, I didn't really express much in terms of substantive comments, neither regarding KNP or Mr. Adonis, who was the director concerned. I did feel KNP had its challenges and its issues, and there may be better ways of going about promoting tourism. But my issues were mainly to do with lawful activity. And those were the basis of the complaints that my colleagues relayed to the DA structures. The DA structures are investigating and are still investigating those complaints around those two issues, in fact. I also laid a number of complaints against my colleagues, broadening the issues to include maladministration and other items that I felt involved corruption. And that is also being investigated by what's called the Federal Legal Commission of the DA, headed by Glynis Breitenbach. Some of you, or most of you, may have heard of her. She of NPA fame is now head of the DA Federal Legal Commission. I've had a couple of meetings with her and with some of her colleagues, and they're investigating it. So far, I haven't heard the results of that investigation. It's been ongoing for almost 3 months now. No charges have been laid against me. No disciplinary proceedings have been initiated against me. So I can't tell you where they're at. Likewise, nothing has been done against any of my colleagues as a result of my complaints. So whether that's because they found no substance, or they're getting bored of it, or they're just slow, I've got no idea. Running in parallel with that was a so-called no confidence procedure, which I felt is not provided for in the DA Constitution, and I objected most vociferously to what was happening in that regard. However, the go-ahead was given by the Provincial Executive Committee of the DA for my colleagues to bring a motion of no confidence into me as a result of the issues that I've just discussed. And that was then referred to what's called the Federal Executive, who endorsed it and allowed them to bring this motion of no confidence against me. I will add that at no time was I allowed to address those two bodies or show them what evidence I had or what the basis of my complaints were. That decision to allow the motion of no confidence in me went ahead based solely on the complaints from my colleagues. Some of the counter complaints that I had, other than the two issues that I spoke about, were involved maladministration and corruption, things like the mayor and the speaker using municipal funds to bring legal action against individuals that they believe had damaged their reputations. Now, a municipality is not allowed to. You cannot damage a municipality's reputation. There is case law on this, it's quite clear. And a municipality should therefore not be paying for any of its other officials or political appointees' reputation to be protected. If they feel their reputation has been damaged, then they are free to bring action and sue people for defamation, but they must pay for it themselves. I don't believe the municipality should do that. So that's one of the things. There were various issues regarding debt collection and credit control policies. There were the potential bonus payments to directors, the wastewater treatment plant I've already spoken about. There are a lot of things here, and I don't want to get controversial here tonight. I just want to say that, you know, there were 2 complaints, mine that consisted of all of these, and the other and the other that my colleagues put in, mainly on those 2 issues. When I came in to office, I was appointed as the portfolio chair for finance, governance, and then it included economic development. The one thing I did find coming into finance was a complete mess. The finance director had recently resigned. I'm talking about last August. We effectively didn't have a CFO at that stage. And the acting MM, who was Carl Mateus, really asked me and gave me a free hand to do what councillors shouldn't really do, which was to try and get involved in ensuring that the administration was at least continuing to operate during that period where we were looking for a CFO or an acting CFO. And, you know, in looking at the situation, what I found was a lot wrong. There was an 82 million rand deficit on our working capital. There was a capital replacement reserve which only had 5 million rand in it. Now, to put that in context, by law, when a municipality spends money on its capital expenditure, it has to have the cash in the bank before it can commit to spending the money. We were committed to spend 59 million rand that year, and we had 5 million rand in our capital replacement reserve. We were taking grant money and paying where we shouldn't, etc. And this was all as a result of what had been accumulating over many years. It was a very haphazard debt collection credit control policy. Well, the policy wasn't haphazard, but the application of the policy was extremely haphazard. Our debt levels were growing and are still growing because we weren't implementing policies properly. Deviation expenditure, i.e. that's expenditure where you are not following proper supply chain processes, was out of control. In the last financial year, that continued. We had, up until June, about just over 80 million rand. I know 80 million seems to keep coming up all the time, but it was about 80 million rand in deviation expenditure. Now, some of that can be accounted for by deviation for fire spending. You know, we have to replace infrastructure, and you can't go down the normal route where you advertise for a month and, you know, then you get the tenders in, and that can be a process that takes many months. And we needed to get infrastructure back up and running in days or weeks. So some of that deviation is justifiable, but not that much. And that was just indicative of where we're at. I found there was not one qualified person in the finance department when I started looking at it this time last year. When I say qualified, nobody with an accounting qualification at all. Control account reconciliations, not done at all. You know, basics like that. Thank goodness I didn't have to do much about it because we got an acting CFO in, Louis Fourie, who's the internal auditor at George. A very good man, very experienced man, sort of heading into the sunset of his career, but had been around a long time. And between the two of us, and I give him most of the credit, if not all of it, we started grappling with these issues. And I'm pleased to report our deficit on working capital has more or less been eliminated. It was very small, I think it was 1 or 2 million at the last report. We've got a fully funded capital replacement reserve for this year, 45 million rand. And that wasn't done without a lot of, we cut real programs, and we took some real hard decisions, and we started putting in place some proper policies. And our new CFO has picked up where Louis left off and has continued with the good work. And that's why I say the financial management of the municipality, I believe, is in good hands. The one outstanding issue is the valuation roll. We had to do a new valuation roll, and there were a lot of anomalies that came up as a result of that. And a lot of them affect people in Ward 10. Now, what we've done there is appointed a consultant to actually look at the valuation rules, look at the rates that we are getting in, and doing an exception exercise. So when you're getting in, almost nothing from one of the major hotels in town, there's something wrong with the valuation. So we've got this consultant looking at those obvious anomalies, and there are a lot of them. So this process is going to take until probably the end of this financial year, that is June 2018, to try and identify all of that. But to give you some idea of how successful it has been so far, to date, and we I won't say we've just scratched the surface, we've done a bit more than that, but we've done a very small portion of the work. We've identified 5.1 million rands worth of additional revenue that we otherwise wouldn't have collected, just a result of this particular exercise. And I know our CFO is particularly committed to that. And that, of course, could have a positive effect on rates increases going forward. Because I don't know what the total effect of the identifying anomalies and getting our collections right is going to be. But I think it's looking pretty good in terms of not having to raise rates to the extent that you otherwise would have. Just because for so long now, that department was very inefficient and very ineffective, and that is slowly being put right. So I've also got some good news for you. I want to end up by saying, and I know this is not a DA rally, but I'm not anti-DA, contrary to what you may have read. I signed up for the DA based on their values, their principles, their policies. And central to that is, adhering to the law. It's being about good, clean, accountable, transparent governance. It's about fighting corruption and maladministration. And if you look at the DA policies, what I've just said to you shouldn't come as a surprise. This is the core offering of the DA. And that's why I've found it very difficult, very bitter pill to swallow, when my colleagues have turned against me for what I believe is trying to implement that vision. I think it starts with the small stuff. I think it starts with getting the municipality to be legally compliant in everything that it does. The laws are basically good. They may be complex, but they are good. They're there to not only lead the way, but to ensure that there is accountability in the system, and that there are systems in place that will prevent misspending and will prevent people from doing things that are going to be at the cost of ratepayers. So I'm a great supporter of most of these things. They are complex laws. The Municipal Finance Management Act, the Municipal Systems Act, the Structures Act, the Rates Act. Believe it or not, I've read all of these things. And I've made myself familiar with a number of the detailed provisions within them. And I think if you start there as a municipality and you are religious about making sure that you follow that you follow what is laid out for you. There are very few poor laws out there, certainly in the municipal area. There may be in other areas. But in the municipal area, I've come to appreciate the foresight of the framers of a lot of this legislation. And I've certainly done my best while I've been around in council for the last 2 years to ensure that we do sweat the small stuff, that we implement what the law tells us to do. And in that way, I believe we will have a proper, effective and efficient government. And we will be able to walk around this town and say, yes, we're a billion-rand municipality and we can see it. And I think one of the reasons that we can't do that today is that too much gets done in the shadows, too much is not accounted for. And I'm not blaming the current administration or even the previous one to that. It's a mindset. And I think if we get strict on that, we will be surprised at what we can achieve. That's my story. I'm not here to plead or defend myself. I'm proud of what I have done. I'm prepared to take the consequences. I have already taken the consequences, and if the DA feels that I shouldn't be a ward councillor either, so be it. You know, it's not. In fact, my wife is begging me to get out of politics. so that's my story. I'm going to be around as long as I'm allowed to be. I will never vote for something I believe is illegal. I do not care what caucuses or parties say about that. I think parties who expect that are misguided. And I would hope that what we can do together is to ensure that the way this municipality is run can become a beacon for the rest of the country. And it's not that hard. That's my story. I'll take questions. Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
Peter, I think we've met before. My name's Minnie Goodchild, and I live in the famous Velveduck area on Velveduck Lane. I think, no need to say, one must be one of the worst roads, excluding Grey Street in Knysna. And we've been allocated, as you mentioned, 3% of the budget. I have read here on this little brochure that in consultation with all of the councillors, the 8.4 million budget was divided in the greater Knysna wards. In consultation with, yet there's no explanation for the breakdown of the percentages.
Very briefly, it is it's an objective approach. So you've got what's called the RAM system. And what they did is they assessed all of the roads in Knysna, and recently, I'm talking about in the last number of months. And then they classified all of those roads into different states, poor roads, not so poor, medium, good, etc. And then they took all of the poor roads and looked at each ward and said, how many of those poor roads are in each ward? And then they used that percentage to allocate the road maintenance budget. Ward 10 came out at 3%. Yeah. I, like you, was incredulous. I mean, I cannot believe that the ward that has the most roads, the oldest roads, the most used roads, would in any objective system come up with 3%. But I have to accept what the officials said. I did argue it at the time, but you know, at the end of the day, you've also got to adhere to the policy that is agreed on by your colleagues and by council. And that's, in consultation, means exactly that. That explanation was given to us, and ultimately, instead of trying to be hard about it or trying to hold things up, at least let's get some of the spending underway. Unfortunately, we're not so good at spending our capital budgets or even our maintenance budgets. Last year, our capital budget was 174 million. We reduced that in the adjustment budget to 147 million, and we ended up spending 109 million. It's a terrible result. Look, it helped us on our reserve side. I'll keep quiet on that, because I'm a finance guy, not the technical.
Where's Ward 9?
Ward 9 is, in fact, the councillor is here, Councillor Valenza. Excuse me, that's Leisure Island, Teeson Island, Pazuna, Hunter's Home,
the Heads,
Lower Old Place. Yeah, look, I'm not here to justify it. All I'm saying is that these numbers were given to us. So it wasn't that the councillor for Ward 9 is more handsome than me and therefore he got a better allocation. You don't. It's through your ward councillor, and I assure you our argument.
No, I believe that. I just find it totally illogical because the development that is taking place on Velveduck Lane, the Friday night market, the Montessori school, the private school people, the wildlife estate, the development there, all the houses that have burned down in that area. So, as a And that gives me very little confidence in, not in you as a councillor, because I know you are up against thunder. From everything I've read on Facebook. Then I have another question. With the current water situation, what is the stance on future developments in the town? Are bigger developments going to be approved? We've got the wildlife estate, which is an ongoing development, which will still be, take place over a long period. I just want
Look,
to know
all developments have to go through a process. Part of that process is that you get the comments and clearances from the various different departments, which includes technical services, and they would look at the infrastructure implications of any development and then make a recommendation accordingly. If there are, if it's rezoning and stuff like that, it goes to the planning tribunal before any development starts in any case. And that is then intensively interrogated by that tribunal before a decision is made. So I'm confident that what we have in place are the mechanisms to ensure appropriate decision making going forward when it comes to development like that. I think it has been haphazard in the past from what I've seen. I'm confident that in the last number of years, particularly since what's called SPLUMA, the Spatial Planning and Land Management Act, came out, and we had to then bring out a bylaw. I was very involved in drafting that with the previous colleague Ray Barrell, who was also a lawyer. And we're very proud of the bylaw that we actually came up with. And I think it will ensure that planning decisions are properly addressed. So I'm more confident now than I would have been, say, you'd asked that question 2 years ago.
I have confidence in the DA as a party and what they are meant to stand for. What are the chances that this vote of no confidence against you will be resolved?
No, it has been resolved. I've been voted out. I'm no longer the deputy mayor or the portfolio councillor for finance and government.
Without having presented yourself or your case or anything. So, what confidence do we have in our municipality as a DA municipality going forward if this is their modus operandi?
Look, from a personal point of view, I find it difficult to answer you. I don't want to answer from a personal point of view because I don't want to be the woe is me guy. I signed up for a certain set of values, principles and policies. I believe those are in place. Are they being truly implemented? The voters have to decide that. At the end of the day, I'm still here, and I will do what I can to ensure that we govern where we govern properly, and we govern effectively. And if that is something that people lose confidence in me over, well then so be it. I'm in the right place.
As our ward councillor, what clout do you have at council meetings?
All ward councillors have the ability to speak in council meetings and in council committee meetings. So you have the right to be heard. However, our system of delegations, and I don't want to get too technical here, gives a lot of their designated delegated powers that get given by council to structures within the municipality. Now, one of those structures is the mayoral committee, and they have a lot of power, decision-making capability that's been delegated to them. That body needs to make unanimous decisions. Otherwise, if they can't make unanimous decisions, it would go to council. So removing me is one of those checks that has been taken out. But it doesn't mean that it's not there going forward, because I can still make my voice heard. But I don't have the ability to make the decisions anymore, if I can put it in those terms.
Okay. And then just a silly question on tourism, and this is just what someone mentioned to me over the weekend. The person supplying the Knysna risers, those beautiful, t-shirts and that. Is there a problem with fraud in tourism, and is tourism linked to the municipality?
No, I have no idea. Tourism, Knysna used to be called Knysna Partners. It's changed its name back to Knysna Tourism. Is an independent entity. It is not controlled by the municipality at all. It is funded by the municipality, but it has its own board. It has its own membership. Its membership comprises of tourism businesses in Knysna, restaurants and B&Bs and whatever. And those members elect a board. That board then carries out the mandate that the members give them. The Knysna municipality for many years now has piggybacked off that arrangement and said, well, we'll give you money, additional money, if you perform some services for us. And that has been going on for many years. Whether that is a good arrangement or not, I may have a different view to you and others. All I say is if we are funding another entity, we must do it lawfully, we must do it legally. And the way we were doing it, this is not just my view, this is the view of at least 5 lawyers from Cliff Decker Hoffman, Cape Town, provincial lawyers, the 3 legally qualified people in this municipality, being the Director of Planning, the Manager of Legal Services and myself, all agreed. We all agreed, there was no disagreement, that the funding mechanism used up until last year was unlawful. So we had to change it. And it was changed. And it was decided that we were going to go through a supply chain process to allocate those funds. My problem is the way we did that was unlawful. Nothing to do with the company itself. I have no idea whether they're spending their money properly, etc. I assume they are. They've got an independent board, they've got some eminent people on it. I wouldn't, unless I get information to the contrary, I wouldn't assume that there's anything untoward. I just don't know.
And then I request to you as our councillor, if we can also be kept in the loop as well, I voted for you.
Thank you.
But if we can be kept in the loop, we've submitted our emails, the parties present. If that could be our main form of correspondence, just so that we also, because one hears stories and then you just, it's all, the whole town is just full of gossip at the moment, the whole political situation. And if we could just receive our communication via email, it's just more personal and it's not this mudslinging public.
Yeah, look,
I'll give me your email address.
the mudslinging is almost inevitable when you acknowledge what has happened.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, and there are raw nerves out there. I mean, mine included. It's not nice to go through a process like that from a personal point of view. When most of your colleagues say no, they don't have confidence in you, you don't understand why, because you're trying your best. That's a hard thing to take personally. And one of the things is, what is the reaction of the residents in the ward out there? What do you want to see have happen? Do you want to see me go? Because maybe I am the disruptive influence that they're saying that they can't make decisions. Or do you want someone like me there? Do you want someone like me there representing the DA? Do you want me just to go off into the sunset? That's the kind of feedback that I'm trying to get from people, and I'm talking to lots of people. I'm in the fortunate position of not having to get the salary. And I think that decisions are better made if you're not reliant on being paid for your political work. Because then I'm not beholden to it. I do it because I believe in what I'm doing. And if you want to feed back to me, Peter, you're a nice guy, you've done your best, but hey, I've heard you're too disruptive, you should go. Then please do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Myers, just a quick question I'd like to ask you. Have you personally seen no funding aside from that? Is that what you've been told?
I have been told by the CFO. I asked him a number of days ago. No additional funding so far has been received. Well, I believe my CFO. Unless you have information to the contrary. I always get a bit nervous when people say that. Yes, ma'am.
trustee of Pledge Nature Reserve. We are trying to get the fence replaced along Kloof Street.
Yeah.
And we had employed a contractor. Then it was brought to our attention that the municipality was agreeing to fund fences along public roads. So we then approached the municipality, and then it had to go through your supply chain things and everything. We were advised at the end of last week that you had appointed a contractor to do it. The next day, he phones the reserve to say, where is Pledge Nature Reserve and where is this fence I'm supposed to be replacing? How can he get a contract when he doesn't even know what he's supposed to be doing?
I'll follow that. Anything else? Yes, Susan.
Yes, Peter, I'm not as diplomatic as you. I say it as it is. Now, the sudden reduction of funding for roads in your ward happened pretty simultaneously with your fallout with your caucus in August. Am I right or not?
It did, factually, but that may be coincidental.
It may be coincidental, but it's very difficult for me to not get the feeling that technical services and some of the political leaders in your party were using that as a way to spite you or to undermine you, because it just happened at the same time, and it makes no rational sense to spend only 3% of the budget on roads in the suburb. Now, I'm not blaming you for that. It just shows
maybe you should leave.
that how people operate this town and on what level they make decisions, and certainly not in the interests of people. Now, you were obviously having a tough time with technical services because you did not want them to spend millions on the wastewater treatment plant, and these things just happen at the same time. I don't want to make this a political thing. I don't belong to a party. I think I've voted for the same party twice. But do not make the mistake and think that parties have got a character. It's the people who run those parties. So open your eyes and see what's happening around you. Now, another thing is, I want to mention two issues that relate to the fire, and then I want to get back to some political issues that I think are important for the people here to hear about. There's two issues with the fire. The one is the asbestos. Can you hear me?
Give it the microphone.
Okay. I'll speak that way.
Take the mic.
So, there's two issues relating to the fire. The one is the asbestos. I have received confirmation that no funding has been forthcoming, and it is such a massive amount that we just cannot even start with that. There's just one thing: it is a health issue, and I know to a great extent that falls under Eden. But I visited a house in Heelwilkraan, where the house next door, which was a guest house owned by a foreigner, burned down, and you could literally see the asbestos fibers in the roof. It's pretty scary from a health viewpoint. And this is somebody who did not insure the house. Some people didn't insure because of financial reasons or others. So there's going to be a time when these kind of properties are going to have to be addressed, and I ask people to report those. If you have a neighbouring house, it's not that one's unsympathetic, but asbestos is extremely dangerous, and it's going to have to get to a time when that's going to have to be removed. Then on the issue of fire victims, Sienna asked me to be part of a group that they formed to represent the interests of fire victims, and this was very much prompted by almost tons of clothing lying in the Edgar's building in Woodman Court, the old Edgar's building. Volunteers, including Candice, your wife, spent weeks sorting through the stuff, only for it to be left and forgotten by the municipality. Now, you have been told that social services and the Red Cross have taken that out. That is not correct. And I'm not saying that you are misleading us. You have not been given the correct information. The Red Cross has nowhere to put all that clothing, so that is not correct. Social services, we have tried to get hold of them probably 100 times. We cannot get hold of them. We are sitting with fire victims who do not have clothes, do not have summer clothes. People across the country put a lot of love into it and sent stuff to Knysna. There were blankets that were crocheted with Bible verses in them. It is disrespectful to them and to the fire victims to just leave the stuff lying there. There is a problem between the municipality and the owner of the building, but I do not believe it is a problem that cannot be sorted out. I would request you, beg you almost, to speak to your ward committee and see if there are some ward funds. If we cannot possibly pay some money to the owners, nothing stops the municipality from collecting the arrear rates and taxes, but that we can just in November get in there and distribute some of these clothes to victims, and then what's left to distribute it to the underprivileged in this town before Christmas. Otherwise we're going to be sitting with those clothes lying there next year, and it's not fair on the people who donated it. And you're not being given the correct information by the acting director, because we are working directly with the T and it can confirm that. So now the political issue. The way this town has been run, literally from the day the new council took over, it started with the MM being pressurized into an illegal appointment of a communications manager. It has just been going from the one thing to the other. This is not what the DA stands for. The current deal, when they basically got rid of you, if I could put it that nicely, you were replaced effectively by Councillor Watler. Councillor Watler is not a DA councillor. He was voted, he's an independent of Ward 4. He was a DA coalition partner. The DA could not work with him, and you got yourselves another partner in February. I also know that Councillor Watler was subject to a disciplinary inquiry. It involved an assault, and it also involved allegations that he was involved in tenders. And the reason I know that is he approached an attorney who told him he couldn't act for him because I was a client of his, which I told the attorney I had no problem. But now those disciplinary charges seem to have just disappeared. All of a sudden, Councillor Watler is more acceptable to the DA than yourself. More than 90% of people in this ward voted for you. That is not all. Councillor Watler's niece, and I would like you to tell me whether this is true, because I've heard this from very reliable sources. Part of the deal to get Councillor Watler to come back to the DA coalition, just for everybody's information, he had actually gone to speak to the ANC and they were about to take over the town. So the mayor apparently approached him, and part of the deal was that the highly paid job in the office for a very qualified person was given to Councillor Watler's niece. Now she was, if I'm not mistaken, a T7. That position is a T15. There's a few problems with the job. The job was advertised on the website for quite some time, but it was only advertised in the local press on Thursday, and it closed on Monday, 4 days. The qualification, the requirements for the job were extremely high. I mean, you needed legal knowledge to write political speeches. It was exceptionally high. I know the person who's employed, not personally, she's an extremely nice person, it's nothing personal, but there's no ways that she qualifies for that job. No, that's going to mean that we're going to now again have to employ consultants to do the work that she's supposed to do. There doesn't seem to be, with your political colleagues and with respect to MN, an understanding that this town actually is in financial trouble and we need to start focusing on service delivery and rebuilding. It is just as though there's no end to the money, and I fear that if the situation remains as it is now, with your colleague who's taken over finance, who quite frankly was not even coping with community services. She's a wonderful person, she's a wonderful political organizer, but she does not understand what happens in council. And how she is going to cope with finance, I do not know. And although the CFO is a very, very good person, and I have the fullest faith in him, I know the pressure that officials are being put under by councillors when they want to have something. When they want to have a contract with Knysna Tourism, you can tell them it's illegal, they don't care, they push. And without you supporting the CFO, I really do not want to know where our finance is going to be next week. So that's it.
Look, I don't want to pull punches when it comes to Councillor Watler. He was in coalition with us earlier on this year, and we exited that coalition arrangement with him for a variety of reasons. But if you think I'm difficult to work with, you haven't seen anything yet. And yes, that's not a question I can answer. That's a question that's going to be put to my colleagues in the DA. They've swapped me for Councillor Watler. What can I say?
You get what you deserve.
Maybe, as I keep saying, maybe he's better looking. Because I really cannot understand it. And I'm not talking against the DA here. I would imagine I know a lot more about what our values and principles should be. And the current administration is, I think, entering into an arrangement with somebody who's highly unreliable and certainly is not of the same views when it comes to many of the values and policies that I think we should be implementing. But it's not a question I can answer. I have to acknowledge the reality that Councillor Watler, in the eyes of the DA, is a more preferable portfolio councillor than myself. It's a fact. Yes.
Just something that I'd like to know, and I'm not in the same way as I am, but I have no faith in the DA anymore. I have faith in you, but I have no faith in the DA. So where do you stand? If this is what's going on in the municipality at the moment, where do you stand? What do you do?
You know, that's why I'm talking to people. I can't answer that question. You know, one's got to. Individuals have to look at that and decide for themselves. There are at least 1, 2 that I've seen, unless there are any more. In council, there are 10 in total. Sorry, say that again? Total number of 21. 10 of them. So that's why we need coalitions. I saw the hand. We've got the constituency chairperson, Rowan Spiss. He was recently voted in as the chairperson of the Knysna DA constituency. And I just saw him putting his hand up, so Rowan.
I didn't want to speak tonight because it's not supposed to be a political meeting, but it definitely has turned into one. My problem with the conversation has been the judgment and the misinformation that has been forwarded so far. I will give you the tip of the iceberg now when I explain something to you, and you have a sheet of paper in front of you. If you look at the back of that sheet of paper, there's a table at the bottom, and this has been the story for the whole time. If you look at the column Ward 10, the first column says Ward 10. You go across to length of very poor roads as a percentage. That says 3%. That is the length of the very poor road as a percentage of the 45,986 meters that it is. Now if you follow Ward 10 along and you go to total expenditure, there's about 6 million and 700,000 rand. As a percentage of expenditure, in the next column, that says 17%. So, as a portion of the very poor road in Knysna, Ward 10 has got 3. As a total of the expenditure, Ward 10 has got 17%. If you go up to Ward 6, Ward 6 has got 22% of the very poor roads in Knysna. As a percentage of the expenditure, Ward 6 has got 14%. But the conversation has been that Ward 10 got 3% of the budget for roads. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that there has been misinformation, the tip of the iceberg. Councillor Myers has not told you that he has had, and this caucus has had, engagements with Minister Wendy all around his behavior and his management in caucus since the 21st of November 2016 last year. That included a follow-up meeting on the 3rd of December of 2016, meetings in February, March, and May. That is just Ellen Wendy. They did not include what Yaku Lon came down for. And I know for a fact that Bonginkosi Madikizela has been here to try and mediate the situation. Why I'm speaking up now, and we can have a political conversation later. Why I'm speaking up now is I'd like Ms. Campbell to explain to me, did she have Councillor Wakla's niece, did she have her CV under eyes? And on what basis? On what basis? And what look did this person give you? What conversation did you have with her that made you think that after all the processes that a municipality normally goes through, that this person was not qualified? My point about political confidence in the DA is this. A caucus of 10 people struggled to work with one person. Struggled to work with one person. So the message you take away from that, not that you personally, I'm saying the conversations that I followed on Facebook, the message you take away from that confrontation and that disagreement is that the one guy must be right. It does not follow. On what basis? What look did he give you? What conversation did he have with you? It does not work that way. There is a point.
I've given you a lot of opportunity.
No, can I answer a question?
Please, I think this is my meeting.
My question is,
if I can ask you, please. Thank you. Thank you. This one. Look, I don't want to get into it. He said, she said. You know, Rowan is not a member of the caucus, so how he knows what went on in the caucus would be quite interesting to know. Well, Alan also wasn't in all the caucus meetings. Finance is a strong point of mine. So when it comes to percentages and the road maintenance budget and things like that, let me assure you that if you take the amount allocated to Ward 10 for road maintenance as a percentage of the 24 million in total, it comes to 3%. The other 6 million was monies brought forward from the previous year that weren't spent on a CBD rejuvenation program. which will hopefully still be spent. And that is nothing to do with the road maintenance. And I know that numbers can confuse, but I assure you, I know my numbers. And in this particular case, I'm afraid the numbers do speak very loudly. And I don't understand it. I accept the credentials of the officials concerned. I accept that they're not mala fides, but I think there's something wrong with the methodology that then results in 3% being allocated toward them. That is my concern. Okay? But I will not go further than that. I will not say that there was a conspiracy and, you know, Suzanne, you were hinting at them getting back at me. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying on the raw facts. If you've got 24 million rand to spend, and you're only spending 3% of that in your most important ward when it comes to economic activity, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to use of roads, when it comes to length of roads, I think there's something wrong with the methodology. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that there are any problems there. In terms of all of these people who were supposed to come down and talk to me about the situation, the complaints were only laid in August. The meetings referred to prior to this all took place before that. And these were all normal meetings that a political head, Alan Wendy is the DA political head for Knysna, should be doing. In fact, I was amazed that he only came here 4 times in a year. These were not specifically to meet with me. These were to meet with the caucus and to try and discuss a range of different issues. It wasn't my behavior at that point in time. There were issues around my objection to tourism funding quite early on, because we'd already presented an item last November about the legality. Now, unfortunately, Alan Wendy is the MEC in the province for, amongst other things, tourism. And most of the municipalities in the Western Cape use the grant funding mechanism that we used to use, that I believe is illegal, and that we got a lot of lawyers to look at and say is illegal. So he had a very strong vested interest in trying to persuade us that what we were doing wasn't illegal. Well, I'm sorry, the law is the law. And if that's inconvenient for your other 30 municipalities, so be it. My concern is Knysna. My concern is doing things properly here in Knysna. And if the other municipalities are doing it incorrectly, that's not my job. And, you know, am I going to bend to the threats from the MEC or anybody else? And how I kept being told that a legal opinion is only a legal opinion, and he can produce another lawyer to give me this view, etc., etc. So fine, do that. But this wasn't a decision overnight. This wasn't something that we woke up on the 10th of August and said, you know what, we don't like the way tourism is being handled. This goes way back to what the Department of Economic Development, which includes tourism, started putting on the table for council back in November. And that involved a procurement process to try and identify service providers who could do the best for Knysna, who could give us value for money. Now, you may differ with me on whether an organization that consists of a voluntary board that has had lots of problems going back many, many years is the right organization to do this or not. They were never going to be prevented from tendering to provide those services. All I wanted was for this to go out into the open, for us to develop a set of specs that other people who are active, even in this town, could then come and say to the municipality, you know what, we can do this for you. We are better because we think like this, that makes it. Let's have a proper, open tender process. We do it for all other services. We do it for roads. We don't just go to somebody and say, I believe you've got a wheelbarrow, come and fix our road. We assess people properly. We say, have you got the expertise, the knowledge, the experience? Can you do it in a cost-effective manner? That's all that I believe should have been done. And I believe that we don't serve people well when we do things in the shadows and when this is all predetermined. I don't believe that. So, but that's my view. If the mechanism was legal and that's the way council wanted to go, okay, that's that. I wouldn't agree with it, but I would go with it. But when they then, on top of that, want to do it in an illegal way, then I'm sorry. I'd rather, as there's something in Glennis Breitenbach's book, that if you have to lie and cheat to keep a job, it's not a job worth keeping. And that's my view. Stan, I'll give you a chance and then I'll come to you. Yeah? Stan? And I know your voice is not one of these.
Thank you, Peter. I don't like what has happened at all. It is not good for you, it's not good for the municipality, it's not good for the DA, it's
Not good for me.
anyone. But when the Auditor General gives this municipality a whole string of clean audits, I find it difficult to understand how, after all these audits have been issued, there is criticism that the whole finance department is a shambles. They might be a shambles now because of other reasons. Getting back to the tourism thing, is it not a better way of managing and doing the work for the municipality by saying, if we do it this way, we are going to be doing it illegally? Is there a different way that we can utilize? We don't need to have our names at the top of the masthead saying, this municipality cannot do anything except if it is illegal. We seem to have become very illegal over the last couple of years. I don't know where all these whistleblowers were sleeping before and while all the clean audits were being given. But I think the DA is the right party. It is just the way in which we operate and how we play together. You can't get the lock in the scrum to say, I want to put my left foot forward, but all the other buggies are putting their right foot forward, and that's why we're losing.
Thanks. Look, I'll just briefly, for my sins when I was much younger, I was an auditor. I'll give you an example. Clean audits are not what they appear to be to you, the layperson. When an auditor comes in, he looks at a sample of transactions and he looks at the materiality factor in the municipality. So we have a budget of 967 million this year, operating 800 million. On the operating budget, his materiality factor is somewhere between 5 and 10%. That means 40 to 80 million rands worth of expenditure. If we are wrong, we are doing it illegally, we are messing it up, it's below the materiality factor. You still get a clean audit. That's what people don't understand. The Auditor General identified in 2014, identified from its sample 9 million rands of irregular expenditure. Irregular means that money should be recovered from the officials concerned. Still got a clean audit, and that was only from their sample. So I want to urge you that the standard set by the AG, we may look good compared to the rest of the country, the other 270 municipalities. But if you compare us to the private sector, believe me, we have a long way to go. Okay, so don't trust the clean audit as being a reflection of...
Give us a better yardstick, please.
No, there isn't one. And the Auditor General himself is very aware of this. They, for instance, going on a drive at the moment, they want to introduce a principle called consequence management. Because what they've identified is they do all of this work, and they identify all this irregular expenditure. And this last year, 45 billion rand around the country was identified by the Auditor General. That's not the total, that's what they identified. 45 billion rand spent by municipalities in irregular fashion with no consequence. Nobody goes to jail. Nobody has to pay the money back. And one of their objectives now is to bring in what they call consequence. They want people to be held to account. They want councils to say, you can't get away with it. But if councils don't have the appetite, then you, the voter, is exposed. And that, unfortunately, has been the case for a long period of time. I won't say how long, because I don't know. But unfortunately, if you're going to start with persuading the small standards, I'll say later on, we have a long way to go. But the returns, I believe, would be great. I believe that if you had a proper approach to financial management, that any large corporate would recognize this municipality would have lower rates and better services. I'm willing to bet on it as a financial person. So I don't know if that answered you, Ben. In terms of the illegality of the tourism, the municipality accepted it was illegal. They accepted the legal advice. They decided not to go the grant in aid route because it was illegal. They decided to go the procurement route. They decided to go the supply chain policy route. They decided that. So this issue of illegality, the municipalities moved on from that. They've agreed it was illegal what we did before. Whether we got clean audits or not doesn't matter. It was agreed by everybody. Unfortunately, the way they went about implementing their procurement process was totally illegal. And that's the problem.
And let's find a legal way. Of course,
Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, Madam. Welcome. Yes.
This is an issue not related to the conversation so far. It's a nitty-gritty
Sure.
issue. A site has been identified along George Rex Drive, and an application has been put in as temporary land use departure to allow the dumping of building rubble. It's the flare land opposite the Premier Hotel, next to the Golf Driving Way. It's an open piece of land at the moment. Most of the buildings that were affected by the fire are on the western side of town. According to this proposal, all the building rubble, all heavy vehicles have to move through the CBD to go and dump it on the eastern side of town. Objections to this close on the 5th of November. Is there anything that you could do as a ward councillor?
You've got to go through the formal process. In fact, the last thing I want to do is get involved in stuff like that.
Because the CBD and the congestion in town is going to be severely.
Put the objections in, that will go to the tribunal, and I believe we're one of the best tribunals in the country in terms of the diversity of experience, knowledge, background, etc. So that's why I put it to them. I know there's a member of the tribunal in the audience tonight, so I don't want the detail. Yes. Yes, sir.
I don't know, maybe the issue has been discussed of resigning as a councillor. Can you please enlighten me? I'm sorry, I'm late. Was the question discussed of resigning as a councillor? Because if we tried it with Zuma and we're not going to succeed, now there's a vote of no confidence in you, Peter. So technically, it should probably be the right thing to do is to resign as a councillor. And then I would think, because there is quite a feeling against the DA here, I gather, that you could stand as an independent in a by-election. And then have the muscles to do something. Because as a DA councillor now, you have everybody against you.
I'll answer that in two ways. I feel I'm true to the values, principles, and policies. My colleagues are not. So why must I? When I got divorced first time, my wife, who left me, not the other way around, said I must move out of the house. I said, hang on a minute, you've done wrong, not me. And you want me to move out? Don't understand that. So that's a flippant answer, but I'm not sure where I have strayed. But your second comment is well taken. And part of the reason for a feedback like this and to receive the comments from people is, what is that feedback? Do people want me to resign? Because I'm quite happy to do that. And you've seen a number of my DA colleagues have walked out here tonight. They don't like the way I talk. According to them, I shout and scream and swear and all the rest of it. I never swear. I'm probably difficult because you can hear tonight. If you're not doing it the way it should be done, then I'm going to tell you you're not doing it wrong. But then, why am I the one that needs to move on? I leave you with that thought. But I'm grappling with it, I must be honest.
But I'm not saying you're wrong, I say stand in the face.
Well, I don't know. You know, what I have seen on council is that independence, unless you council what up, really don't have much of an influence. Because you can be ignored. You know, the larger parties do their deals, and you may or may not be part of that deal. So yeah, I mean, you're a voice. But exactly how that works out, I don't know. Whether I have the stomach for that or not, I also don't know. So I'm not sure how to answer you, but it's certainly something that is spoken about in my household often, whether I reside or not.
So we're just going on the feeling of the lack of confidence in the DA in the Knysna municipality at the moment. I'd like to find out, how do we get answers on why we should actually build up confidence again? We see this has happened to you. We saw what happened to Diane Kalabana. We saw what happened to Helen Zilla. And it just seems to be going on and on. And on top of all of that, we look at a municipality where we have not been explained exactly what has been going on, what brought this about. We're hearing from you, we're hearing from this one, we're hearing from that one. The fact is that we've seen a municipality that can't actually they can't lead. A good leader would be able to sort this problem out. They wouldn't have to run to the big boys to ask for a vote of no confidence. It seems to be the big thing. We don't like Zuma, so we'll go for a vote of no confidence. Or we don't like him again, we'll go for... And it just seems to be the fashion at the moment. I'd like to find out who do we go to? Do we go to, what's his name, Alan Winders? Our MP, whoever he is, we never see him. Didn't even know we had an MP. We know the structures, he should be one, we don't know who he is. Was he here during the fire? I didn't know that. So I would like to find out, do we go directly to these people? Where do we start building up some? Because right now, if Prof van Gordon had to start up a party, I think I'd vote for him.
You probably wouldn't be alone. Look, it's not for me to give a party political speech here and try and justify it or not what has happened with the DA. That's for the voters to make up their minds, and we include it. We've also got to make up our minds as to where this is all going. I can assure you that the top leadership has received a lot of communication from a lot of people, because I've been copied in on a lot of it. Some of the responses have been surprising to me, but as I said, I don't want to go into a he said, she said type of situation. I think if you're a DA member, voter, supporter, potential supporter, and you see something that you don't like, it is your prerogative to communicate with the structure, starting with the leader and the provincial leader and the constituency leader. So these are Musi Nomani, Honorable Nkosi Navikizela, and the regional leaders, Yatalont, and the local constituency head is Aaron Windy. I think you must communicate with them, get their answers, some of them are going to be different to mine, and just make up your mind. I think with that, you've heard from me. I'd love to hear from all of you. I'm grappling with my own problems at the moment in terms of what I should be doing. Whether you would want somebody else from the DA to represent this board, or whether you want me to carry on. And I'd like feedback. Not in this forum here. If you guys can communicate, and I can take a sounding and determine what I should be doing going forward. But thank you very much for attending tonight.